It's April 5, 2025. We're talking today with John Nyberg. And John is a longtime name here in Tualatin because his father was the first mayor of our city, and now he is here representing the family that's lived here for many years. So John, let's start by telling us where you were born and what year and so forth.
I was born at Good Samaritan Hospital in Portland to Kay and Clayton Nyberg, and I've lived in the garage at the old home place here in Tualatin for several years. And then we moved across the road, and I used to get in troubles because I'd take and walk across Nyberg Road and go up to the barn and be with the animals. So then
What year was that you were born?
1947,
47, okay.
and I'm the eldest of my family. I have a sister, a brother, and a sister. That's Christine, Arnie, and Ellen. Christine's 2 years younger than me. Arnie's 5 years, and Ellen's 8 years.
So the old home place that you mentioned is today just would have been west of the freeway I-5, but it didn't burn several years ago, right?
Correct. I remember them picking it up and moving it so they could put the interchange in there at here for Tualatin, the old interchange.
And that was where your farm was, essentially?
Yes.
Nyberg Farm?
Correct. And the farm ran from Sagert Road to the Tualatin River. And so we were 140 acres at one time.
And so in those days, what were you raising? What was the family involved with?
I remember walnuts, corn, potatoes, cattle, dairy cattle. We were milking them twice a day. And then pigs.
And so undoubtedly you started with family chores very young.
I've got a shirt at home. I checked in at age 5 and haven't checked out yet.
So what were some of the chores you really hated to do?
Probably the worst one was shoveling out the chicken house because of the ammonia. The pigs weren't bad, but the chicken house was. When the freeway came through, we had to move 12 of 13 buildings. And so in that process, we ended up, my grandparents on my mother's side financed the construction of our house that was on the east side of the freeway. And we moved into it in the, probably just prior to 54. Because in 54, I think, is when Grandpa passed away. And I remember, because he built the Tualatin Road and the Tualatin-Sherwood Road, he wanted to go up I-5. And I-5 wasn't opened yet. And they made arrangements.
Yeah. So I-5, do you remember the year what year that opened? I-5?
Probably late 54, early 55, I think somewhere right in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then the Nyberg Road was part of State Highway 212, which ran from Romer's Rest to Timberline.
Wow.
And the early maps of the layout for the construction of the interchange, Nyberg Road was still classified as a gravel farm road. So that was back in the 40s. And I remember the night the bridge was pulled down here in town, because we were still living on the west side of the freeway.
So the house that you lived in for a number of years was the one in the Nyberg Wood Shopping Center now?
Correct.
That's where the barn and everything was?
Where we had we had a couple of the structures that we brought from the freeway made us move. We're set up there, but most of it was all new structures. And the house, when we got ready to put in the mall there, we picked it up and moved it to Newburgh. And my son is living in that one.
Good,
So it took an hour and 25 minutes to get from Tualatin to Newburgh, the other side of Newburgh. It took 6 hours to get up the Red Hills Road to its final destination.
Good. So as you were growing up, what schools did you attend here in Tualatin?
I attended Tualatin grade school till the 6th grade, and half of our class went to Sherwood. Or they stayed there and then they went on to Sherwood when they completed the 8th grade. And then I went to Fowler Junior High for 1 year, which was the old Tigard High School. And then I was in the first class to go to Tualatin Junior High, the first class to graduate from Tualatin Junior High, and then to Tigard High School.
And then you went on beyond that to college?
I went to Multnomah College in Portland, and then transferred to Oregon State, and graduated from Oregon State in 1970.
And you were studying agriculture in that period?
My degree is in animal science and agriculture.
Okay, good. And then you were working at managing a farm, right, for somebody?
That was after I came out of the service.
Okay.
I was drafted 3 different times. So the 10 days after graduation from college, I was raising my right hand and being sworn in to the U.S. Army. I served as a veterinary food inspector for the Army. And my main area started out in troop issue, then I moved over to the commissary store. It was the second largest in the world. We did $1.2 million a month in groceries only. So you try and figure the logistics of all that. My job was to make sure the food that was coming in was of good quality.
And where was that again?
And that was at Fort Ord, California.
California, okay.
So then when I came out, within a week I had a job managing Star Mooring Farm on the Wilsonville Road out of Newburgh. And I was there for 20 years. And working cattle, we had 200 head of mother cows. And so it was, we were scattered 13 miles from one side to the other with the city of Newburgh in the middle of it. So having to make hay out on the east side and putting some up in the barns on the west side.
A lot of moving equipment on the roads that are getting busier all the time, right?
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
I still do custom farming out there, and I haul my tractors now to the fields because of the traffic. A friend of mine that we used to show pigs with, he was killed on French Prairie Road when a car ran up over the back of a trailer and on top of him on a tractor.
So as you were growing up here, what were you involved with in the city and the town and then a village almost?
About the only thing I was involved with was, well, the fire department had the summer baseball league that I was involved with. And then 4-H was my major one. And from 9 to, I'm still in 4-H.
You're a leader in 4-H, right? In the
Correct.
state?
Well, I'm a trustee emeritus of the 4-H Foundation.
National?
No, the state one.
State one.
Part of Oregon State University. I'm a fellow in the E.R. Jackman Foundation, which is the College of Agriculture's foundation. And I'm still very involved with our county association. And I have a 4-H club with, we're right around 60, 65 kids right now, with 20 plus leaders. And we have 23 meetings a month at our house.
Wow. Now, Is that a 4-H specialized in some livestock or other animal or what?
We involve everything from art to welding.
Okay, good.
And we've even got clover buds, which is kindergarten through 3rd grade.
Okay.
So it's a very active group.
For a while you were having rabbits, right?
Yeah, I was raising rabbits. When I left the farm, I started raising rabbits and showing rabbits. The furthest I've driven to a rabbit show is Providence, Rhode Island.
Okay.
And then when my late wife passed away, I still continued on, but when I remarried, my wife Rosie became allergic to them. And so we depopulated.
Okay, right.
And the past vice president of American Rabbit Breeders came and he took 150 of my 200 does.
Yeah. So as you grew up here in Tualatin, what were some of the things you did with your friends and such? If there was time, you were busy a lot on the farm, at school.
Not an awful, I didn't do an awful lot. Because I had chores.
Right.
Dad was in politics, and so I had a feed twice a day, and when I was in junior high and high school, I milked once a day. So that was pretty time consuming when you got done milking 40 head of cows and still having to do homework. You shoveled your food down and went to studies.
No time for fun, hardly.
Yeah.
Do you remember any special things during the year, like Halloween or Christmas or things like that?
I remember one Halloween, and that was the one going around with Barbara. Coach Kern took Mom and us around to visiting different places, and later that night they had to take Mom to the hospital because that was the night Ellen was born. Just after the 31st,
After
Halloween.
Trick or treating turned out okay.
She can't claim she's a witch.
Okay. All right, great. So, as you grew up here in Tualatin, what were some of the businesses that were here then that everybody kind of went to?
Well, as you came up Nyberg Road to the intersection with Boone's Ferry, there was Hannigan's service station. And a block over was Bonk's, which was a Shell station, next to the old post office. And then there was the brick store. And Garrett's was next to the one of Hannigan's. They were grocery stores. And then Summers was built later on Nyberg Road. The church was there. Back behind the church was the old city hall, and also the original fire station. And then coming back around, there was the fire station, the second block off of Boone's Ferry. And then behind that was the Grange Hall. And then on down the street there, later on the post office was built on that street, kind of across from the Grange Hall, as I remember. And then down a little bit further was the Bun House, and I remember a time when it was flooded, and Dad talking about seeing a hat hanging on the wall in the garage when he was helping move the people out, and later on he found it floating down the street. So that's where the lake is now.
Well, there were several floods in many years there, Mark, right? There's over time?
Yes, there was quite a few floods over time. And I know it's different ones were talking about moving people. The only high ground in town was the railroad tracks. So we had the Crawfish Festival here in town. That was another activity that was fun to be around a little bit and so on. I don't remember the parades that much, but there's a picture of me packing a banner for the 4-H club coming down the street, and I think the other end of the banner was K Coach.
Yeah.
jet, so,
Yeah.
but
So were you involved with Grange activities, your family, or was that important or not?
not that I remember.
Yeah, yeah,
We were more involved with the 4-H side of things.
good.
Dad was second at the National Corn Show, and Mom was second at the National Make It With Wool. So they were up the top.
Right, right. And then over the years, you kept involved with things like that, like in state fairs, county fairs?
Talking about county fair, I can remember when they moved the fairgrounds from Sheets Park in downtown Hillsborough out to its current location. And I think that was about 54. And then and a lot of the buildings that were there were moved from between the fairgrounds and stuff. Some were new ones. Some went down in 62 with the Columbus Day storm. And, but I remember showing up there. That was most of my time in 4-H was showing there. Doing, I can remember one time being an escort for the style show. And we used to fill the armory up there with a crowd. The style show was that big. And then from there, I moved on to State Fair, and I was showing at the State Fair when we got the word that my grandfather on my mother's side had fallen off the roof of the barn and died. And so they brought me home early, but left my animals, and then we got those later. So, and the barn went down in 62. So it was
So you must have a wall full of ribbons.
I have a few, but I have not kept them. I've got my dad and mom's record books that are full of the ribbons and stuff, but at one time I just had them all strung around my room in college, but I don't even know where they're at now.
Right, right. You mentioned your first wife, and what was her name?
Nancy Beauvais Nyberg. She was raised at Sherwood.
And you had how many children there?
We had 2 children, a daughter Sonia, who is now Rig is her married name, and she's the CEO for our family operation.
Okay.
And then a son, John, who's right now unemployed, but he's been working corrections both in the community side of things.
Okay, good. So, and you married Rosie in what year?
In May 14th of 2016.
Okay.
So she has 2 children. One is living and working there in Newburgh. She moved out here from Minnesota after going through a divorce. And her son is down in just out of Shawnee, Oklahoma.
Good.
And he was just here a couple of weeks ago visiting.
Yeah. So now you say you still farm by doing contract work with people that you know in that area.
Correct. This last December, I reduced my workload by 17 clients. I found a youngster in the area that just out of college looking for work to do, and so I contacted him, and he's a 4th generation Oregonian, so okay. And he will take up most of my clients there, and that I've still got about 7 clients that I have to deal with. So, but I'll be 78 here in another month, so it's time to slow down a little bit.
Right. So mostly that's just handling the equipment side of things?
Correct. I've got 7 John Deere tractors, everything from a pedal tractor up to 100 horsepower. And so the tractors each have their own responsibilities that they're set up for. And so I work that out and keep them moving, but I can jockey them from one thing to another if I need to.
So is that a problem of the declining acreages in the area now for farming in Oregon in that area?
My clients, most of them, my largest one was 10 acres. And I had one that's about 1.5 acres. He was next door to me. And I could get 3.5 tons of hay off of that. That's enough to basically feed a horse all through the winter. So, I mean, it's, I got good production. This last year was a super year. I got 200% crop compared to the year before, so I ended up disking some down, cutting some and letting it lay. And then one field, the person that had gotten it the year before got everything he needed, and I still had a lot left out there, so Rosie drove and I stacked it on a trailer, and we'd haul it to a rescue and dump it out in the field for them to feed their animals.
Good. Yeah. So the 4-H is great for kids. Do you see that moving ahead further more nowadays, or what?
It's really picking up, and I've just spent several 3.5-hour sessions on what we call positive youth development, and it's beyond ready. So we're working now from developing these youngsters from the kindergarten age through to about 25, and so it's going to be very, very positive, and I'm thrilled that I'm one of the few that they allowed to be part of it. Most of it has been extension agents, professional people, but with the size club I have and the development and the club, the kids out of my club where they're at, they're the leaders.
Yeah, that's great. How about your own family business here in Tualatin? Now that you mentioned earlier, your daughter Sonia is the president or chair or CEO of the organization. What does that include?
It includes the service station on the southeast corner, the wetlands, the Nyberg Woods, Nyberg River, Nyberg Creek, and Quad 217. We used to have property in Hillsboro, but the city of Hillsboro wanted it because they wanted to expand Intel into it. We're part of that 300 acres that for their project development there. So we sold that and bought the Quad 217.
Okay.
Because otherwise, if you don't do it 1033, Uncle Sam seems to think your pocket needs to be emptied a little bit. And so that was and it has been good for the family. So, and then plus we also have a house down in Lincoln City.
Okay. So that supports a lot of people actually now because of the way your family has expanded, right? You mentioned your brother and your 2 sisters.
Correct.
And they still live around or in the Oregon area, right?
I'm the furthest one away from home in Newburgh. My sister Christine lives just west of the golf course. My brother lives just across the river from Brown's Landing in River Grove. And my other sister lives in Lake Oswego.
And so they have children, right?
They also have children. We went through a program here 2 years ago where the Williams Group, we worked with them, or they worked with us and brought us back together and helped us look at where we're going to be in the future and how to go from, we're classified as Generation 2, and then Generation 3 is our children. There's Generation 4 out there, plus there's also Generation 5.
Wow.
So, yes.
Quite a story.
And quite a few kids, and we did a major change in stock this last December to help the G4s out.
But the first one that was visible, I guess, would have been the Sweetbriar Inn that used to be on next to the freeway on the east side of I-5.
The first thing was the Texaco station, and then we ended up with the Chevron station, then Kmart on the west side, and then then the Shell station, and then the Sweetbriar Inn. And that was in '65.
And that became a big draw for the area, right?
It was basically the only motel between Portland and Salem along I-5. And it was a southern design to it. It had the banquet facilities and restaurant, and I remember meeting Richard Nixon there. I know that Humphreys and McGovern were there. Robert Kennedy was there a month before he was assassinated.
And didn't they host the Beatles one or two nights when they were having a concert or something in Portland?
They snuck them in and out because they didn't want people to know where they were. But yes, they stayed there. And I think it was about the same time the American Legion was having their convention in Portland. And when the American Legion had their convention, they had everything from Albany north tied up.
And you were gone maybe a lot of that time on your Army assignments and such?
Well, that was, I was off in college, and the time that the Beatles were there was while it was during county fair time. So I was gone at that, so I was either there or state fair, I forget which, but I wasn't around.
Right.
So.
And now you still are doing some work internationally, right? Could you describe your international charity work? So you were in a project down in Africa that you heard about, right? And got involved there.
Because of my sister Christine and her involvement with the church and the community garden that they had up there, got involved with Jim Sorrell, Timber Jim, and he was involved with the garden, and so he started coming out and getting rabbit manure for the garden for several years there. And he made comment that he wanted to introduce us to actually Fomer, and anyhow that it's Homer, I should say. And she was the executive for a school in Mtwambu, Tanzania, which is next to Lake Manara, which is the up above was where Hemingway wrote some of his books, and we stayed in the lodge there. But Mtwambu is on the road between Arusha and the Serengeti and the Ngorongoro crater. And so we got involved with the school there. Our first trip there was in 2018. The thing that we did that's remarkable results is that we found 2 rabbits there in the town. And there's the old adage, you get 2 rabbits in a calculator. And we started working with them on developing a rabbit program there. The program now is to the point that they're feeding 160 kids 1 day a week rabbit meat, and their goal is to expand it to 2 days a week. We also were involved in a water project, and there at times during the year the city shuts their water off, and so there's an escarpment where the water comes out that we have 2 plastic pipes that are about 3/4 inch for 5/8 of a mile carrying the water down to the school. Well, in order to have a decent supply of water, we invested in a cistern for them they dug and built themselves and lined it with brick. And then at the beginning they were only able to get the water out by bucket, rope and bucket, and then we invested in a solar pump so that they could have water there and in the classroom also. And so the neat thing about this school is that all the kids passed the exam to go on to college or at additional schooling, which is unheard of. it's gotten to the point that they're concerned about the kids cheating to get that, for them to graduate like that, or that schooling. So the military monitors the kids in the classroom when they're taking the test. Because there's, the best of any others is 90% passage. So our program is working.
How many years did you go down?
Our last trip was in 2020, and we were going to be there for 3 weeks. I got sick. We didn't know what it was, but I was not doing well, so we came home after 1 week. And later on, I found out I had gotten COVID. And the only reason I knew I'd gotten COVID was when I donated blood. The antibody test came up, and so, and I had not been vaccinated. And I have not recovered yet from it. I have no taste and no smell. So it's, you can put a whole bottle of sriracha sauce on my meal and I don't even taste it.
Well, that's quite a project, though, and it's going strong, and you and Jim both worked on that for several years there. Garden, you taught about a garden and everything, right?
Yeah, well, they're able to take the trimmings off the garden and the banana leaves and stuff to feed the rabbits, because they don't have a feed source there. They have to use what they've got there to feed them. So not like where we can go down to the farm store here and buy feed. That just isn't there. And the kids that go through this school, well, it's gotten to the point now with that program that the director of agriculture there in Tanzania is now pushing other schools and private entities to implement something like it.
And it's called the Red Sweater Project, right?
Correct.
Right. And it started right over here by the lady in the Oswego?
Correct.
Right.
Ashley Homer. So, yeah. It's, we've got former students coming back as teachers. I know one of them is a doctor that's in the community there. So when you take these Maasai children and can educate them and do something like that, it's good results.
Yeah. So it's not 4-H, but it's a similar model, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in 2020, they were going to have the World 4-H conference there in Tanzania. It was going to be the first one, but they had to cancel it because of COVID. Last year it was in, I forget where they had it last year. I didn't find out about it till just recently when I was working with the director of 4-H from Taiwan. But the one in 26, I think she said it's going to be in Holland. And so Rosie and I are going to plan to try and make that one.
Good, good.
So,
Well, so looking back, what do you think your grandparents and parents would believe about Tualatin if they were here today? Could they quite understand what had happened?
boy, Grandpa Pop, I'm sure, would not believe it. Because as hard as he worked and did things, and of the 4 of us children, I'm the only one that really got a chance to know him. And so, and I can remember the night before he died that he was sitting in the kind of the reading room, and he had my brother on his leg playing horsey with him. So, but Dad would be kind of upset with the way things are in that he was the co-writer of Senate Bill 100, which is the land use planning. And he was hoping to preserve the farmland for farming, because there was, God quit making ground a long time ago. but he hasn't quit making people. And of all the people that have walked on this earth since Christ, half of them are walking on it today. And so we need to hold ourselves together and go up with structures. We need, only 2% of our nation's population is tied to farming. We're only 2 generations removed. And so we've got to have building control and population control. It's just the truth.
Right. But the legacies of the Nyberg family are many still today. And you mentioned the fire department. Was your parents or your grandparents involved with that, starting that?
My great uncle, Bill Barngrover, because Grandma Nyberg was a Barngrover, was the first fire chief. And so, and he was the first fire chief that even had a car in Oregon. Because I would talk with the boys over at St. Paul that were part of the fire department there, and they would say that he would come to the fire chief's meeting and he was the only one that had a car. The rest of them had to drive their own private vehicles. And so Dad was very involved with that. And Mom was involved with the school. And the school was, they served lunches. The mothers would go together and can things or put things together for meals. And I remember them going out to the Springbrook Cannery in Newburgh and canning the beans and peaches and stuff that way.
A true community effort.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate your being here, John, today and hearing the story of your life and also the family too. And so as we drive down Nyberg Road today in the 2025 and on era, we're going to remember how it used to be there with the farm and the animals and the trees and the filberts that you grew. I guess we call them hazelnuts now.
Correct.
But all those things were part of your story. So from shoveling chicken manure, you did a lot of work on it. It grew and grew in shopping centers and whatever. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.